Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDarkSymphony777 with another fanfiction reading. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts to the story. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, the story I'm doing a reading of is Attempted Redemption by Professor B. Book. I don't know why there's a dot in book. The creative choice. It is a Hilda fanfiction, so let's get through this. He held the letter in his hand tightly, afraid that if he let go, the wind might blow it away. Trevor was standing at the entrance of one of his favorite parks. It was nice and quiet here, and not many people came often to play on the decaying playground a few steps away from him. His eyes scanned the area, seeing a few Sparrow Scout members help clean up the park a bit, and a few kids sitting quietly by themselves, doing whatever they came here to do. It was quite warm out, so there was more people today than there usually were. That was a good thing. He was looking for a girl, Hilda to be exact. The first time he saw her a few days before she actually moved, expecting the school that he went to. He was in the courtyard, playing with his friends when he caught a glimpse of her bright blue hair moving through the crowd. She stood out so much to every other kid and didn't seem to understand what was going on at the school. The bell rung before he could work up the nerve to talk to her and introduce himself. Trevor couldn't stop thinking about the girl, though. He waited the next day in the courtyard with all the other kids just to see if she would check things out again. But no bright blue-haired girl ever appeared. He was a bit disappointed, but after a few days, Trevor quickly forgot about the encounter and just went back to his normal life. He was still curious about who she was, but he decided that it didn't matter whether or not she met him. Pretty sure Hilda's a girl. Grammar error! It's a big grammar error! Grammar error! Soon the day of the bird parade arrived, an event Trevor was not very interested in partaking in. Everything seemed normal at first on that day, as he and his group of friends were all talking about their daily plans they would be doing. On that day, though, Trevor saw Hilda again. She introduced herself as the new girl, freshly dropped off from the wilderness and exploring the city for the first time, and she came up to the group asking if they could be friends. Of course, a part of him was very excited to see her once again, but he decided to play it cool as they hung out together with his friends. He wanted to make a good first impression on her, only things didn't work out the way he planned. Most of the things that she did seemed not to understand, and whether they practiced her old tricks, she simply couldn't seem to get the hang of it. Trevor remembered his friends asking him to leave her behind, insisting she was being a drag on their plans for that day. He declined, however, determined to impress her and let her join their group. So when she brought up the topic of rocks and showed him a small smooth stone, he couldn't resist but to throw it into the trees where the bird was perched. He had thought by showing her his throwing skills, she would be amazed at him. Then, when he hit the raven, he instantly knew the opposite was true. He could still remember Hilda's face as she ran over to the raven in worry. She was so angry at them, so disgusted at what they did. What he did. Trevor couldn't help but feel guilt twist up inside him as he watched her taking care of it. And then everything else happened. He thought he heard the bird speak, but then Hilda wouldn't let him see it and ran away. His friends teased him throughout the entire afternoon about scaring the new girl. He felt so embarrassed and angry that he felt the need to take the raven and put him in a birdcage to try and get him to talk to his friends to prove to them he wasn't lying. He was attacked by a small invisible force the next second, causing his friends to laugh at him and the bird to almost escape. In his rash anger, he took the raven to the river, where he then thought he heard a voice, and accidentally dropped the bird into the water. Hilda came once again, jumping into the water, and didn't come up for a few moments. Trevor wanted to jump in to help, but he stood back as the raven burst out of the river, so much bigger than he already was. Trevor watched in horror as the realization dawned to him that he just kidnapped the great raven. For the next few days after the incident, Trevor walked around drowning in guilt and shame. He couldn't help but blame himself over and over again for everything that happened that day. No matter what he did, his thoughts always drifted back to Hilda and how angry she was at him. He knew he had to do. Sorry, I misread that. He knew what he had to do, but he was so afraid to go and do it himself in fear of Hilda's reaction. So what if she rejected him? What if she hated his guts so much that she wouldn't want to even talk to him? He couldn't stop worrying about all these things, so he quickly decided to just keep his head down and try and forget the encounter with Hilda and the raven. As expected, it was kind of hard to. Every day and night, Trevor kept seeing flashes of what happened that day, making the poor boy feel even more guilt for what he did. Sometimes he had terrifying nightmares of Raven picking his eyes out. His friends looked on in amusement. Even when he wasn't asleep and fully active, the memories of that day were enough to make Trevor feel like he was in a nightmare constantly. He didn't tell his mother or his friends about the silent suffering he went through each day, as he knew they would react with great concern and guilt for not noticing his pain. Trevor didn't want anyone else feeling what he was feeling, so he just quietly kept it to himself. Better to just keep his head down than to get anyone else hurt anymore. A few weeks went by after that, and Trevor never got over the encounter. Nightmares became more frequent, his attitude towards people became more noticeable. People tried to help, but he just pushed them away. It seemed like the torment of guilt that would never end for Trevor. Then one day, something extraordinary happened. He was in history class, writing notes about some old dude who once was alive. Trevor was pretty much zoning out that day, and just wrote down information about the lessons to study for later. He wasn't really awake until he actually stopped to read what he wrote. Most of the things he wrote down were pretty simple, but then he came across one word that made his heart stop. Atone. Atone. He didn't remember writing it down, but somehow the word struck him with such intensity that he couldn't keep his eyes off it. The word, atone, repeated in his mind over and over again, like a broken record that wouldn't stop repeating. It bounced around in his head, replaying, reversing, many, many times over until it was burned into his brain. The day of the bird parade replayed in his mind as Trevor kept thinking of the word. He could remember every detail of that day still, like a painting. Something was different. Every time he thought about it, the word played in his mind as each thought unraveled. And after a few moments of this, thinking about that day, he finally knew what he had to do. He started with a card, making sure it sounded genuine and sincere enough. It took a day to get it just right, but eventually, Trevor finished it. Next, he had to get a gift, which wasn't very easy. He didn't know if Hilda liked chocolate like him or appreciated good wood carving. It took a while, like the card, but he eventually found a couple of flowers that would hopefully make it work. Then there was the hardest part, actually tracking down Hilda in order to apologize. Misspelled right there. She apologized on apologies. There weren't many places he knew where she most visited, and he didn't like the idea of doing his apology in school where everyone would watch him. He stared at the statue where he found the bird that day calling for the girl. Pain struck his heart as memories flooded back, but he forced himself to wait to see if she would come there. She did, however, and he was forced to keep looking. The next place he went to was the playground where they met Hilda, which also turned up empty. They left one final place he knew, which was the city square, as he hoped that Hilda's mom had taken her there for the day. Of course, that also turned up with no appearance from the girl, which left Trevor stumped more than ever on where to find her. School started the next day, and Trevor continued to find out where she would go when out of the tip of his ear, he slightly overheard a conversation between a couple of Sparrow Scout members talking about their trip to clean the park. Almost everyone in school knew Hilda had joined as a member of the Sparrow Scouts, including Trevor, who prepared to meet her there, which is where he was now, at the park, watching members of the Sparrow Scouts pick up loads of trash. He searched through the now crowded place looking for Hilda. He went with the crowd. Trevor knew she would be easy to spot with her bright blue hair, so his search hastened. They quickly scanned the park filled with people. Luckily for Trevor, his search didn't take long. As soon as he spots the familiar bright blue hair of Hilda, currently working at the corner of the park, she was with two other kids who he remembered being in his class but didn't really know their names. It didn't matter though. Hilda did. Trevor reminded himself of this and quietly approached them, clutching his card and flowers. Memories raced through his mind and his heart rate sped. But he walked until he was right behind her. She sensed his presence, however, and quickly turned around. They were now finally meeting eye to eye. It took so much energy and determination. But Trevor finally managed to get the words out he dreaded ever since their last encounter. Hi, Hilda. Been a while, huh? Trevor had it planned out in his head many times before he went up to her. All he would have to do is simply walk up, start some friendly banter with Hilda, give her notes and flowers, and then leave. It was that simple. He had done it so many times in shows and movies that he watched. Characters always succeeded in doing these steps. Only 4 steps, all of which seemed so easy at first. But now, as he stood there, staring Hilda in the eyes for the first time in weeks after the incident, he couldn't even bring himself to utter a word. His mouth felt like it was crawling with butterflies, threatening to spill out and ruin the entire moment. His legs wobbled and whined, feeling like jelly ready to fall. He had no idea how he was able to even approach her with the state as it is. But now there was no turning back for him. Hilda's eyes sent Trevor's heart in panic. She looked confused, but more so annoyed that he was there, which was not a good sign. It made what he was about to say all the harder to do. A few seconds ticked by full of silence, and at this point, the two kids that were with Hilda both noticed Trevor as well. One was a boy, and another was a girl. Both seemed just as confused as Hilda, making a lump appear in Trevor's throat. He had thought a moment ago that it didn't matter at all about what he was about to do, but now he realized that with witnesses watching him, it would be even harder to apologize to Hilda. Just say the words, Trevor, he told himself. Be over as long as you can say the words. Trevor opened his mouth to apologize, but nothing came out. His head replayed the day again as if despite him. He remembered the rock being thrown, the shock in Hilda's face, and the anger that soon followed. It was almost impossible to believe that Hilda would be even moderately forgive him after that. A few more seconds, a bit more silence. Trevor was now panicking quietly to himself. His feet were ready to run, but his body stayed still as he looked for the words to say. It was almost impossible, but he forced himself to look. Can I help you, Trevor? Hilda calmly asked. Shock, and then a bit of relief flooded through Trevor's heart. She actually said his name without screaming at him, or it sounded disgusting by him being there. That was a good start so far. He had just had to continue the conversation. No, he replied. No, I don't need anything. The words were fading again. It was so hard to maintain a sentence that he barely remembered that he was going to talk about. Uh, Nice weather we're having today, right? He said. Nice weather, Trevor said to himself. Idiot! Couldn't you come with anything better to say? Hilda and her friend said nothing to Trevor's poor attempt at starting a conversation. He didn't know if it was because they didn't know what to reply with, or because they felt sorry for him in some way. Yes, Hilda started. It was quite nice out today. I know, right? Trevor interrupted quickly. It's so lovely out there right now. Confusion spread across Hilda's face again, sending chills through Trevor's spine. Had he said the wrong thing? Was he just annoyed he interrupted her? His heart pounded at the thought of upsetting Hilda again. Silence speared through the air again, stressing Trevor out as he clutched onto the note with extreme care. Hilda's friends were now both whispering to each other, which worried Trevor even more as he thought to speak. Oh God, why is this hard? He thought. Hilda looked straight at Trevor with concerned eyes, and then down at the group again. He wondered if she was eyeing the note. Um, Trevor, Hilda started. Yes, Trevor replied, a bit more nervous than before. Can you please move? She asked. You're standing on top of a dirty started can right now. Trevor's eyes darted down toward the grass below him to find his boot was currently crushing a can of leftover soda. A bit of fizzy drink was still leaking out the can, spreading onto the grass under them. Of course, Hilda, he said, moving a bit. The moment he stepped back, Hilda leaned over and grabbed the can before quickly putting it in the trash bag she was holding. Trevor noticed that the bag was full of leftover junk that she had been picking up, such as crumpled paper, crushed cans, food wrappers, and even a couple old newspapers. Compared to everyone else's bag he saw, Hilda's was the closest to being full. You're picking up trash for the park, he asked. Hilda looked up, a bit confused at Trevor's question, but also a bit nervous. He had no idea why. Well, yeah, Hilda said. You won't believe me how many times people just throw things away without any consideration for the environment. Trevor gulped nervously, remembering a few times when he did just the same thing without thinking. Wow. Some people just throw things on the ground like that, he said. Not even in the trash cans? Surprisingly, yes, Hilda replied. Which makes no sense at all since trash cans are everywhere here. Trevor considered what Hilda told him carefully, noticing the number of trash cans that the park had. Man, he said. Must suck for the people who work here. Yeah, it really goes to show that some people don't think before they act, Hilda said, glaring at Trevor. It's just a shame if you asked me. Trevor's heart sped up after Hilda finished her sentence, noting that she was staring at him the whole time when she said that. He wasn't convinced before, he knew now that Hilda still remembered the day that the raven was clear as freshly baked pie. You still remember what happened, he asked. Trevor instantly winced and then realized he said exactly the wrong thing. Oh yes, I do remember, Trevor, Hilda said. I don't see how you coming up to me now after weeks of avoiding the problem is going to change my views on you. Her eyes were full of annoyance now, making Trevor's heart ache with pain. He knew she had every right to be mad at him, but he also knew that he had to somehow make this right. Even if she hated him for eternity, he still had to apologize. Hilda, Trevor stated, I know you're angry, Beyond livid, she corrected. Yes, beyond livid about what I did, he continued. And I know it was wrong, and a stupid thing for me to do. It was silence now, and for a moment, nothing existed except Hilda and Trevor. Go on, Hilda said, eyeing him closely. Trevor's hand shook, but he forgave his.
A miserable little pile of secrets.
This is why I have my phone on darn storm warning. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah. Trevor's hand shook, but he closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. The air around him smelled like sunflowers and roses from all the flowers that surrounded them. What I did can never be forgiven, he said. But I hope that I could atone for what I did and make up for you somehow. He expected Hilda to roll her eyes after he said that, to walk away in disgust and leave him there alone. But she did something she never expected her to do. Her eyes softened, and her glare was gone now. She actually looked interested in what he had to say next, which Trevor prayed was the case. A few moments of silence lingered on them, but this time Trevor was no longer nervous. Frida and David, Hilda said. Can I talk to Trevor alone for a bit? Trevor was so focused on the conversation that he actually forgotten the other two kids that were behind Hilda. Both of them were just staring at him, both seemingly annoyed like Hilda was a moment ago. He was sure Hilda had told him about what he did to cause them to be so cautious of him. You really want us to go, Hilda? Frida asked. Yeah, you sure you don't want us to stay? David said as well. Hilda nodded to both of them. I'll catch up with you later, Hilda replied. Both seemed wary to leave Hilda alone with Trevor, but eventually Frida took her bag and walked to the other side of the park, with David's two following as well. With both of them gone now, it was just the two of them. Hilda and Trevor were both now alone. Trevor had dreaded this moment for days, weeks even, knowing that at some point he would come across Hilda alone and have to face her by himself. He had no idea what she would say now that her friends were out of earshot. Hilda examined Trevor with her eyes, worrying about to slap him. However, she did no such thing and actually looked a bit nervous as well. He wondered what was happening through her brain. Was she thinking about that day too? She seemed to still not trust him, which was understandable. He knew she had the right to hate him, but he hoped that he would be able to convince her that he wasn't like that anymore. Not anymore. Before Hilda could speak, Trevor opened his mouth to cut her off. You have no reason to forgive me, he stated. And I got that. I wouldn't really forgive me either, but I wanted to tell you that I was sorry, and I completely understand that what I did was awful. If I could turn back time and correct one moment in my life, it would be not throwing the rock at that bird. He breathed in when he was finished, shocked that he got the words out. For days he thought, and even dreamt of saying all this to Hilda, but never did he actually think he would be able to tell her in person. Hilda stared at him with uncertainty. How can I know you changed, she asked. Trevor breathed in deeply before he responded, knowing that his next few words could either make or break the conversation. Every day I beat myself up for what happened, he said. I couldn't stop thinking about how much I messed up when I threw that rock. I had nightmares, constantly was paranoid. I just wanted to make things right again. But I didn't know how. I didn't know how to fix everything. It was silent for a long time before he said the next words, until now. Hilda's eyes widened a bit as Trevor handed her the note and flowers. The flowers were bright daisies, brought and planted right from Olivia's garden shop. The note was neat, and the poem was long at the end. He hoped it would convince her to forgive him, at least for a little bit. For a few moments, Hilda said nothing. Then she looked up at Trevor. You wrote me a note and got me flowers, she asked. Trevor simply nodded. Hilda looked down at the gifts Trevor had gotten her with curious eyes, and with careful hands opened the note. She read the note. Trevor watched silently as he read through the whole way through, quietly observing her and hoping that she couldn't crumble into pieces like he thought she would. He spent an entire day on it, choosing the words and hoping they sounded right, making sure the note was consistent and whatnot to what he was saying. He thought that once he gave Hilda the note, that it would be over, that they could both make up and move on with their lives. But now seeing it, actively looking at his card word for word, he began to worry. He started to remember the words he put in the note and started to nervously think about how Hilda would interpret it. Would she think the note was good? Would she think it was bad? He could see her squinting at some of the words. Was she analyzing it? Or was his handwriting hard to read? He would try his best to make it neat, but now he wondered if he didn't make it as clean as he thought he did. What if it was messy and Hilda thought he didn't even try? Now Trevor was starting to squirm, thinking about the possibility that... Trevor, Hilda said. He almost couldn't make himself stare at her, but he did. He was expecting to see a crumpled up note in her trash bag, or even seeing her holding it up in confusion with smudgy lines and all, but she didn't do any of that. Instead, he looked up and found that she was smiling. You wrote this? She asked. Somehow the question made Trevor feel lighter, like a huge weight had lifted off his battered shoulders. It made him a bit nervous to reply, but also happy knowing that she was smiling while saying the words. Yes, he said sheepishly. I mean, I had some help from a website online, but I don't care if you got help, Hilda interrupted. All I care about is that you wrote this card with your own hands or not. Those words surprised Trevor, who actually took a step back before realizing Hilda wasn't insulting him. She was actually asking a question about the note, which he considered for a bit before responding. Yeah, he said. I did write for it. A silence filled the air after Trevor said those words, making Hilda quite surprised. She now stared at the note with a newfound appreciation. You didn't need to do that, Hilda said. I know, Trevor replied, but I thought it would help explain things better, without all the rambling coming from my mouth. Trevor and Hilda both giggled at his attempts to break the ice. It was nice to have her laughing with him and not glaring at him like instead like he thought. The entire conversation was actually going better than Trevor expected. Once both the kids stopped giggling, Hilda looked at the note again and scanned the words. There still seemed to be some hesitation in her eyes. He knew he had to somehow convince her that he had changed. Hilda, Trevor stated, I know this probably doesn't excuse what I did. I know this doesn't make us friends, but I'm hoping you'll forgive me about everything that happened, even if I don't deserve it. Hilda was silent, making sense of Trevor's words and considering what she should say back. She paused for a bit, thinking heavily about what he did. Listen, what you did back there was wrong, Hilda said. I didn't think I would ever consider approaching you after what happened. Trevor winced a bit when hearing that, but I don't know now, she said. I think, uh, even with what you did, you are trying to change. I can clearly see you're hurting over what happened. A long pause between the sentences, filling up Trevor's body with worry, as Hilda contemplated her next words. And I know a thing or two about messing up as well, she added. So, I know how you feel in that department. You, messing up a bit, Trevor said. I couldn't see you doing that. Hilda smiled a bit before looking at the lush green grass around them. Oh, I made my fair share of mistakes, she said, holding a book with some ice, which wasn't very pretty. Trevor wondered what she was talking about. It certainly wasn't his business, but it would be a story he couldn't wait to hear if Hilda ever told him. Guess what that makes us human, though, Trevor said, even if it sucks when it happens. You're right about that, Hilda replied, looking away. Hilda stood there, silently looking at the grass, the wind blowing, shaking the leaves on the trees overhead, Trevor and Hilda. The branches rattled, the tree groaned, and Trevor waited anxiously for Hilda's next reply. A second ticked by, and then another. Trevor watched nervously as Hilda looked up. Another second went by as Hilda looked at the note. Trevor wondered what she was thinking about in those few moments. Maybe she was thinking of that day again with the bird, so she could find a reason to say no to him. Or maybe she was actually considering forgiving him. No matter what she said, though, Trevor had mostly come to terms with accepting her choice. He was scared before Hilda rejecting his apology, but even more so now that things were going so well. But to show Hilda had true to change, he had to show that he was completely understanding of whatever she decided to choose. Hilda looked up at Trevor's eyes and smiled. I forgive you. Relief, happiness, joy. He honestly didn't know what emotion he felt first because in that single instant it felt as if a huge crushing weight was finally released off his fragile shoulders. For weeks he had been worried about this very specific encounter, and now it was over. And it was ending with her forgiving him. Really? He said. Even after what I did. Everyone deserves a second chance, Hilda replies. I think you were really trying to atone for what you did. Atone. The word struck Trevor with the whole time during the talk, and only now did he finally realize that he finally accepted what he set out to do, and realizing that placed a shy smile on his face. Thank you, Hilda, he said, for forgiving me. Don't mention it, Trevor, she replied happily. I'm just really happy you decided to apologize. Again, that's apologies, not apologize. Trevor's heart swelled in accomplishment after hearing Hilda say that. It felt good to actually atone for what he did after weeks of beating himself up. For a moment, he felt amazing. But then Hilda sighed. Well, it was really nice to talk to you, she said. But I guess now that I better get back to cleaning up before Frida gets on my case. Trevor followed Hilda's light aside to see both Frida and David watch them carefully, before jumping a bit and quickly getting back to work. Oh yeah, Trevor said. I guess I'll let you get to it. Yeah, I guess I will, Hilda responded. Thanks for the talk. Trevor watched as Hilda began to leave him. But as he did, he felt a sudden urge to say something. Anything. Just to keep her from walking away. Wait, Trevor spoke. Hilda turned around once he said that, having a confused look on her face. He felt like he had something more to say, but the words just didn't come out. He thought he had done it just to give the note to her and then leave. It should have been just like that. In fact, nothing was stopping him from leaving. He had finally atoned for what he did. He could just go. Except deep down, he knew he wasn't quite finished yet. Trevor looked around and saw the group Hilda was faithfully a part of. The Sparrow Scouts. All of them genuinely working hard on restoring the park. He could see her friends in the distance, smiling and laughing as they helped clean up the park. Despite the condition of the place, they were all still willingly doing their part, joking around and making friends all the while they did. This was the first group Hilda was a part of, and the longer he saw them, the sooner Trevor could realize why she had joined them in the first place. This might sound sudden, Trevor began, but I was wondering if you could use an extra pair of hands for the cleanup. For a moment after he said that, he could sense a look of surprise on Hilda's face. Oh no, you don't have to do that, Trevor, she said. The note really was no, he interrupted. It's just that I understand it now. Why you chose this, and I want to help too. Even for a bit. It sounded so cheesy in his head, but he meant it. And he was sure Hilda could tell as well, because soon her surprised expression was replaced by a genuinely warm smile. You sure you want to pitch in? Hilda said. Could take a while before we finish. He didn't hesitate with his next words. I'm sure, he said confidently. Without warning, an empty trash bag and some gloves were suddenly placed in his hand. He was quite surprised to see how fast Hilda whipped them out for him. But it quickly turned excitement as Hilda took his hand. Well then, we haven't gotten a second to lose, she said. Let's go restore this park! Both Hilda and Trevor quickly made their way toward the rest of the Sparrow Scouts after the talk, noticing how all of them were cleaning happily as they made some friendly banter with one another. Trevor was quickly reintroduced to David and Frida, who actually seemed like really good kids as well. He couldn't help but admire them at points during the cleanup, since Frida had planned out pretty much every step they would be taking, and David had the occasional rare bug in his hair. Despite how nervous he was at first, he quickly found himself telling jokes and making everyone smile as the cleanup went on. Sure, he wasn't. He knew he wasn't sure. I'm messing up this so bad. Sure, he knew he wasn't anywhere near friends with them, but he felt as he grew a bit more comfortable hanging around them than the year before. And during the whole time, he and Hilda stuck together. He finally got to see parts of her that he never noticed, even during the day they first met. And he suddenly began to realize how much he had been missing out on not becoming friends with her. He didn't mind though, because now there might be a chance, even if it didn't happen, he would just be happy knowing that they were on good terms. Trevor stayed during the entire cleanup, and after it was done, he was rewarded along with the rest of the Sparrow Scout juices and cupcakes made by the troop leader. He practically devoured them after the long day, making almost everyone laugh. Once it was done, he said his goodbyes to Hilda and her friends as they went their separate ways. Trevor began to walk home, and he noticed the rest of the Sparrow Scouts get picked up by their parents. He only watched Hilda throw as her mother and hugged her hugged one another when she arrived. He noticed how Hilda instantly began showing his note to her, and that was the moment Trevor decided to really leave. As he walked, the events of the day kept repeating in his head. When he came to the park, talked to Hilda, joined the cleanup, it seemed to happen so fast. But now he was there wishing he could replay it again. But he guessed it didn't matter because now it was all done. It went way better than he ever expected to be. And as he finally made his way home, he realized he had finally atoned for what he did. So, that is Attempted Redemption. I don't think it was bad. I think it was a short and sweet redemption story. There's not too much depth to it, which is fine, but it does have some character development with Trevor thinking about things and actually going out of his way to write the note, get the flowers, and talk to Hilda. So it's there's character development there. Not a lot. There's only so much you can do with a story this short with character development. I think that's fine for what it's trying to be. The only issues I see are the two grammar errors, which were just accidentally typing apologies instead of apologize. I would fix those. But I don't have anything else to say about the story. I think it's a good, solid story. Nothing really nothing really fancy, but it gets the job done. I gave this a 4 out of 5. So this has been Dark Symphony 777 and cut.